Okay, hey, how's it going, you guys? Just a quick double check on some technical stuff. Welcome for those of you joining here for the first time. I'll kind of get things going in just a second as everybody also starts to settle in. We'll see who's able to join. But again, welcome for our current session of live stream Q&A, sketching, and just being able to hang out and discuss things of many topics within the world of art and design and education. So again, if you're hanging out here for a little bit, please do grab a sketchbook, pen, pencil, whatever you want to do. Take some notes, sketch with me, ask questions, and we'll make it a session. Okay, so it's been a little bit of a minute in terms of last time I was here. So we'll slowly kind of pick things up as we go along. But always I like to kind of set things up and just talk a bit about first what we have to use today, and basically go from there. But let me just make sure. Okay, audio is up. And if you guys are out there, any sort of feedback is always helpful in the beginning in terms of things like audio, video, that sort of stuff, because I just always want to make sure things are working properly. In any case, right now we're just going to be using a sketchbook that I've been kind of hand carrying around. I haven't really used it that much since the last live stream, so I'll be just kind of picking up on this one again. A little bit far away. Hopefully it's kind of like bearable. I'll try to move my mic a little bit closer. Give me 1 second, because it's on the side right now. Maybe something like that. Okay, so we do have my just day-to-day use sketchbook, which we'll just get to the page that we're going to just kind of work on. This is some of the stuff that we had last time, which was the dinosaur sketch that we did in the last YouTube sort of live stream. And then I just did this the other night, pencil sketch of the morning star. And today I probably will plan to continue using a bit more pencil stuff, which I rarely do, and I don't remember the last time I did it on a live stream. So I figured it'd be kind of fun to sketch a little bit with a different material where everyone is kind of more used to me using pen and brushes and that sort of stuff, even some of the watercolor. So just a little bit of a change of pace. But for myself, I like to go through these like cycles at times where it's an intermixture of mixed media, where I am primarily more interested in ink. And this is more of a combination of a preferential thing, but also in due to kind of my training and what I do for my education of the classes that I teach. So people sometimes maybe wonder why. It's like, why don't you use other sorts of materials like ballpoint or pencil or such like that? And they're fantastic tools. There's no reason why you should not use them. But there are certain benefits of sticking to a more permanent medium like ink, which is going to give you more of the environment of the lack of control, so that you're able to commit to more of your lines and sketches, drawings, or whatever you're producing, to learn in that situation, because it's an educational experience, right? It's not about what's the best media in terms of producing a piece of art to sell or for client work, but it's more of a personal sort of journey towards developing your skill. And in terms of that part, educationally, ink still has a lot of benefit, again, due to the fact that it's a very uncomfortable and challenging media in terms of just being able to overcome that sort of fear of a blank piece of paper and that sort of like dread of, possibly messing up. But messing up is a part of that process. Despite that, when you do go through a lot of your education and build up to a certain level of confidence and skill set, turning to things like pencils and ballpoint then can yield even stronger results due to the fact that, again, your confidence of line, your confidence of the material, confidence of things like mindset and subject matter, you're going to be able to confidently also establish, right from the get-go. So in the beginnings of pencil use and ballpoint use, the problems are sometimes there's this tendency of wanting to slow burn a drawing or sketch, which is just to hesitantly kind of lighten up your line work and go through many strokes to build up the drawing to a level of quality that you like. But that's the thing. It's like quality really isn't the initial priority at that point in education. It's more about the process and mental mindset of understanding how to approach the thing of study. Regardless of all of that, right now, in terms of what we're doing, is not necessarily educational, sort of like process of drawing that I'm doing. We can do educational talk, but this is more drawings and sketches that I do personally for myself. So because it's personal enjoyment, it'll vary from things to things. But despite that, still, again, pencil is not something I turn to all the time. So what I'm going to be using today, and if I am going to be using them, and I use them more for the intention to do a pencil drawing or sketch, I have a couple of different things I picked up. This is actually stuff I picked up today. I went to the art store. Um, and so I have a various amount of things I can kind of discuss. I'll even zoom in on this a little bit more so you can see better. Typically when I was in high school, uh, pencils were kind of my go-to material, as for most, young people that are kind of beginning their self-education and personal practice. And mechanical pencils I used to go to all the time were 0.5 millimeter, maybe a 0.7 millimeter at times. And I would use like a 2B pencil or a B pencil, lead in terms of the graphite powdering. But this one is the Kohinoor, and this is a 0.9 millimeter. Over the many years, what's happened is I've gotten more used to broader and thicker sort of like tool sets, whether it's like a pencil or even ink, where I used to be all about fine control of a line. So back when I was a teenager in high school, I used to use a lot of mechanical pencils for thin line, but also repeatographs. And repeatographs are more technical drawing pens. They're great for permanent like inking tools, but they were super fine lines. So I was very delicate and over controlled about that sort of stuff when I was, in my teenage years. But as I've gone through many decades, I've loosened up, a big part of that. And my material interests have become more about being less so specific and tight, which naturally I still am, and I have to kind of battle with that even today. But I try to use tools that kind of take me away from that sort of like fine line sort of approach. Couple questions as I'm getting into this. Aaron Carlos is asking, how do you stay motivated with art? Well, for me, it's stuff like this, coming together with you guys on live streams and YouTube, or even definitely in person. So as discussed many times in the past, a lot of it is using other sources of enthusiasm and excitement and interest with other people. So as you sit down with them, whether they're just a single friend or a group of friends or a group of peers and coworkers to sketch together, becomes highly valuable to keep you very enthused and driven to produce. So yeah, so Omega's saying you learned a lot more from brush pens, which can be good, but I prefer fine liner tools and then the brush pens afterwards, but brush pens are also fine to use. Triculi is asking, do you think ballpoint is a good in-between bridge the gap between pencil and brush pen? Yeah, I think a ballpoint should be brought in no matter what at some point in your process, because it still produces that sort of hesitancy at times, so it's not a very good sort of like initial entry sort of beginner tool for building confidence of line work, but it still is a wonderful tool to kind of do renderings and stuff like that. But I think if you're able to build line confidence with fine liners and go to ballpoint as a kind of an in-between, I think it can be proper. But at the end of the day, so preference is preference. But I'm talking more about the angle of education. But right now, what I do have is this Kohinoor. This was a mechanical pencil I picked up not too long ago. And this is a 0.9 millimeter. The lead that I am using, I've bought these recently. This is just on Amazon. I just went to Amazon, researched a little bit on different sort of leads. This one's called the June Gold. This is a 0.9 millimeter 4B. This is 4 different sort of cartridges. And I pack it as much as I can inside the pencil. So the previous drawing, really, not a sketch, which is the Morning Star drawing. This one was done exclusively with the mechanical pencil. So this was done with the 0.9 millimeter 4B. Now this paper from the sketchbook that I had, which I'm not quite familiar with the type of paper it is, but it's definitely more like a woven, not woven, pressed, but has this sort of like light texture pattern into it. More of a cream color, smoother, thin paper, probably about an 80-pound paper. It takes the pencil okay, but it might be just a little bit tad too smooth to really grip the graphite to make it as intensely dark as I want it to be. But 4B is something I do like. And again, when I was a student, I used to primarily use 2B lead, which is okay. But over the years, again, I wanted to go more softer, intensive darks, that sort of stuff. I don't really use H leads. People use H, the hard lead, for light sketching and drawing for the underlay, and then they would ink it and erase it. A little bit easier for erasing. Where the B line is more of a, bolder, heavier graphite, which can go into the paper fibers and a little bit harder to erase. But when I was a student, 2B was what I used to go for all the time. But 4B is something I would, as a minimal, go for today. And then I have my other wood pencils. So what I picked up today at the art store This is a Faber-Castell. This is a 6B. This is a matte graphite, PITT. Never used it before. I just saw it, picked it up. Thought it'd be kind of interesting. This one is also a Faber-Castell. This is a Castell. I know it's kind of hard to read that right now, but this is a 6B. So we have two, oh, I'm sorry. This is a 6B. These are 8Bs. So I picked up two 8Bs, which are the Faber-Castells. These ones here. And then I have another one, a fourth one, which is not Faber-Castell. This is a Japanese pencil, it seems like. It's a Mitsubishi. This is a 9B. So I have 4B, 6B, 8B, and 9B. And this can go all the way up to 10 or more. I don't really use a lot of charcoal for my own sort of like personal sketch or drawing work in a sketchbook. In a sketchbook like this, I prefer a graphite, but you're still going to get a lot of smudging. So usually what I would do if I was working in a book like this, for this sort of heavy pencil graphite drawing, I would most likely hit it once or twice with a quick spray of workable fixative and let it dry, and then it'd be a little bit more smudge proof. Right now I haven't sprayed this, so if I was to carry this book around, most likely it would smudge on this side of the paper pretty easily. So the question is why? Why am I turning to these type of pencils that are like 4B or heavier to the numbers instead of like a H or 2B, what I used to use? And a lot of it has to really come back down to the boldness of the darks, right? Getting that high contrast. And the reason why also is because I refrain from erasing. As you'll notice, I do not have an eraser I'm going to use here. Now, obviously, the mechanical pencil is a small eraser. I could use it to kind of bring up a little bit of highlights, but usually in my drawings that I'll go for, whether with the pen, obviously I can't really backtrack that. The permanent tool is a permanent tool unless you're going to white out the sections or whatever. But with a pencil, you know that you can erase it. However, with the kind of extensive training that I've done, it's not that I'm not wanting to erase, it's that I don't have to anymore, So that means the line commitment, the line confidence is the same as I work with a pencil or with, a fine liner pen. So these tools, even though I may educationally start with something like this for a lot of students, pencil, when I start to go back to them, because my confidence built up so much, I actually don't really need to erase at all. So in this previous drawing of this character, was there any erasing at all? Maybe for that eye right there, okay? And a little bit of the edge of this picture. That's it. So the rest of this drawing was straight in all the way through with no erasing, okay? So that means I'm all about line confidence and line commitment, even with the pencil, which is why we're going to all the way to like these, 6B, 8B, 9B pencils. Usually people that are looking for like, slow burn, light build-up drawing and wanting to do a lot of erasing back and forth, these sort of pencils are really hard to work with because they're so, heavy with the graphite. Okay, so I have an idea as to what I was going to draw. Usually when I do these live streams, I don't really come in here with an exact thought as to what I want to sketch. And I'm going to start with this Japanese pencil. No, I'm sorry. I'll stick with this one first. The Faber-Castell. This is the 8B Faber-Castell. I'm not really going to use the mechanical pencil. The reason why is because the way it felt on this paper, which the previous drawing was done with, it felt a little bit too slick. So it wasn't gripping the lead the way I like it. Now this paper may not work well with these wood pencils either. But we're going to try because I don't know. I just bought these today. Somebody had also asked about how my eyes were doing. And I appreciate your guys' comments and questions about general health stuff. But I am doing a lot better. Slowly building even more strength to be able to kind of just, retain vision far away. Definitely, night and day compared to when I first was hit with this sickness in June. So 3 months have passed and I've been able to be a lot more mobile, do more of this kind of day-to-day routine. And we talked a lot about that sort of stuff, previously. And I did do a video on YouTube. So if you guys want to check out more, just, updates of health, please do go check out that video. But again, questions of anything else you guys want to ask about regarding that, you're welcome to ask. So I haven't thought about exactly what I'm going to sketch, or I don't have a visual per se, but I have an idea. Okay, so the idea was a man playing an instrument. Why I came up with that idea, I don't know. It just popped in my mind. It's going to be a little bit fantastical. It's going to be playful in terms of things. It'll be a single character with an instrument. I'm going to put some other stuff around it. I'm not going to be erasing. There's going to be no need to. However, just because I say that doesn't mean that you are not allowed to. If you're using pencil, erase as much as you want, right? If you're using ballpoint, go for it. If you're using brush pens, fantastic. So tool-wise, if you're sketching with me in these live streams, I mean, there's no restrictions, to do what you got to do. Just enjoy it, right? And Bingo Mongo's asking, do you collect fountain pens and any favorites? Real quickly before we start sketching here, here's just a couple I can share with you real fast. Usually this sort of material talk I talk in my classes, but I don't mind doing it real quickly on a live stream. I have an assortment, and these ones right here are kind of my more primary tools that I would kind of like promote, which is the Esterbrook line. The Esterbrook, E-S-T-E-R, Brook, is an American fountain pen company. It's been around since like the 1800s. It's gone through many circulations and resurgences and stuff. And right now they're doing pretty good. So these fountain pens, which I highly recommend, you're looking at starting, depending on the size you're looking for, and if it's like a limited version or a standard version, between $190 US and up, which I think, in my opinion, is a good price point. You can go much cheaper, which is fine, like a Sailor or what is it, the Pilot, kind of off the shelf brush fountain pens, which are like $30 or less. You can get even some cheaper $8 ones. There's a little gnat flying around in here. But you can also go a little bit higher end. This is a Esterbrook collaboration. This is about a $400 pen. This is a custom pen from a company called Carolina Pens. This is about a $400 pen as well too. These ones are not filled right now, so I'm not really using them, just part of the collection. This one is a Japanese brand, which I don't remember the name of, but they do make some really nice ones. This is all wood, indigo blue, dyed, and also around 300. This was a Pilot. This is the 912 model, custom 912, and it has a Falcon nib. This is also about a $400 pen, but it's a super flexible nib. I don't actually recommend super flexible for a lot of artists, even though it's what's been designed for artists. I think it's too soft. A little bit of pressure, I think, is good. Trying to see if there's anything else, but that's good. All right, so again, I have a general idea as to what I want to sketch, but we'll just kind of play with it. Before I even just start drawing, the idea right now is to be able to just go through a process of kind of what I call ghosting of motion. And the ghosting of movement is about being able to kind of like feel out, where this piece will go, right? I'm going to just shift this down a little bit because it's creating a shadow on my face. Give me 1 second to chat. I'm just catching up with. Seth is asking, how do you get a good silhouette when dealing with line work? Well, shape design, right? And also then thinking about read, front, middle, back, or first, second, third sort of read distinctions. And it's part of like learning about even graphic design and compositions, about where you want to place those shapes based on the reads. Simplicity is a huge factor. Over detailing front to back tends to be a killer for a lot of drawings and flattens things out. So it's all about also reading things from a distance. So the good thing you want to do is when you sketch things out, whether a thumbnail or a full piece, is to stop and put it up and step away. The further you step away and be able to squint your eyes, you can start to see the shape language better. And that's kind of the tricks we use, when we're students all the time. Omega's asking, do you think learning writing can help with characters coming to life? Bring your characters to life. Absolutely. Learning about writing, even like acting, even about behavioral science, psychology, understanding biology, that sort of stuff. Learning and education beyond just about drawing can be very, very helpful. Learning then also build your own confidence and socializing, right? Getting out there. I'm still seeing a small little gnat fly around. Came in from the outside. I want to open the door. Anyways, so it's going to have a single character I'm going to sketch out right now. I'm just kind of ghosting it. So based on a character right now, from things that I've seen in the past, I'm kind of in memory right now going through some things. What I've seen from my own personal experiences, things from film, movies, people that I know, and being able to kind of hybrid things together to be able to get a sense and essence of what kind of character I want to emote in a manner. So first is a sense of where the drawing will go, and then I'll start thinking about interweaving that kind of ideas of characterization, right? So right now I'm just kind of, this is in a way visualizing without really putting anything on the page. So what I'm doing at the moment is trying to get a sense of like, oh, this would be the head, and this would be like the arm. So ghosting, going through the motions of stuff. The legs down this way, instrument going this way. He'll be kind of looking this direction. I might put some stuff around here. It'll be a slight down angle, So it won't be like directly at him, not an up angle, down angle. So I'm already considering things like camera, position. I don't know what he looks like. I don't know what he's wearing. I don't know what the instrument looks like. I'm just doing some basic sort of visualization sort of mentalities, right? Process. So right now this was about position of the drawing, general placement of stuff, and now considering camera. Okay, so those are all the things I've done without even drawing anything just yet. So before you guys even sketch, the idea is to be able to go through this process of being able to be mindful and visualize and consider what it is you want to do, and just don't rush in there and just start drawing right away and scribble your way through it, trying to hope for the best. Usually in that situation, you'll end up being burned, you know. So the best thing to do is give yourself some chance of time. I know that some people watching these live streams are like, draw, draw, draw. You know, it's like you're talking so much. But as I'm talking, you have to understand that I'm going through a lot of process in my mind to see what I want to do with this thing, because I don't know what it's going to be. So I have to give myself a chance to at least slowly start to build up to it. And in the past, I used to be much more to the orientation of like, I got to move quickly, you know. And that's fine. It's great. It can be impressive for some people, like, oh, you draw so quickly. But these days, you know, I think the slowness of the process, a slowness of just getting started, and just giving myself a chance to just kind of like enjoy even just creating, having the creation process is a really good thing to kind of like stay within, right? It's not about forcing it. It's just letting it come to life on its own. And these sort of philosophies and mentalities have kind of like germinated over the years, and I think recently it's been a lot more of a part of my sort of like natural inclination of what I want to do. Couple questions early before platinum. Kim Jong-gi said he was able to draw like 60% what was in his head, and the other 40% was improvised as he went along. Would you say I'm the same? More or less. I don't know exact numbers for me, you know. I would say there's definitely improvisation, and I would say there's a large amount of early memorization. But that's not like an immediate picture perfect memory from what I see. It's just built up accumulation over decades. But that's just from the constant repetition of practice. I'm going to go down a little bit. So if I skip the question, I apologize. You can ask again. Kane's asking, what do you think is the best approach learning anatomy would be? You know, you're currently trying to learn it and you find a lot of things you do aren't really sticking. Well, first, you have to just give yourself a chance, right? Patience. Be disciplined. Stick with it, you know. This is where finding other sources of enthusiasm and drive and encouragement becomes helpful. Instructors, students, and, you know, giving yourself a breathing room to learn is tough because you want to see that quick turnaround, but it's not going to happen. As someone who has over 20 plus years of experience and have taught thousands of students, I can tell you that that's just the normal case. It'll take time. So in that, you know, situation, all you can really do is just stick it out. And then from there, you know, find as many resources as possible, research like crazy, but enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy sketching anatomy stuff, which it should be somewhat fun, I know it's still learning and educational and a bit more monotonous, but if you can find something within it that makes it very kind of like triggering to make you stay attached to it, hopefully you can find that angle, you know. I don't really do Inktober, no. And Pogsum, I'm doing well, thank you. Have I ever worked with Katsuya Terada? No, but I know him. He's a cool guy. We always say hi to each other and you know, always have a quick chat every time he's in town. But, you know, I've never had a real chance to like sit down and really have a deeper conversation, or never really get to work with him. But anyways, okay, let's start sketching. So what I'm going to start with is, my initial inclination is to start with the head, which I may in this case because I kind of have the instrument going this way. But you know what? Let's start with the shoulder and the arm. By the way, before you even start sketching, sometimes using your own sort of like body and behavior is important. So like, even if I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, I'll, using my own body, go through the motion of it. So I imagine like he'll be holding the instrument like this, and he'll be coming in with a string, like a bow on this side. It's not going to be like a cello, or it's going to be more of like an Asian instrument. I'm going to make it up. But he's going to come up like that. So I know that this arm may overlap the body. So if it's going to overlap, it's going to come this direction. I kind of want to start with the arm first. All right. I have no idea what he's going to wear, but let's just start sketching. Now, the thing is I'm touching the paper right now. I'm just kind of moving. And I'm just flowing and following a direction that I think could be fun. all these like small little strokes here and there and building up to something, or lightly drawing it with thousands of slash marks, with the pencil lead, is not something I'm looking for. I'm not saying it's not ideal or something that you can't do, but I think wasted motion is unnecessary. Sometimes you gotta just even hold it and just kind of feel out where you want to go and then move. As you'll notice, I tend to hold the pencil pretty far back. I stay away from holding the pencil like this too close, because now I can't really see where the pencil is touching the paper from my angle of view. So the further you can hold it back, you have a clear view as to where your pencil is, or your pen. And so I don't necessarily have to like turn my head or lean in. As you'll notice, I'm actually standing right now. I'm not even sitting down. So I installed all this new stuff in my office. And the table that I'm on right now is elevated a bit higher. And I could move it up even more if I want to. But this gives me a clear angle of sight without having me to like contort my body. So then I can just kind of freely move and not be worried about if I see things or not. I'm going to put his head starting down here. Some old man. I don't want him to look, sort of sinister or something like that. I want him to look a little bit more, not charming. I'm trying to think of the word. Inviting. But the problem is I tend to make characters always very like angry and sort of not demonic, but a little bit unsightly creatures and monsters and stuff like that, right? We'll zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see better what's going on. Bingo Bungo, in terms of the book, the Dynamic Bible, the only place from Europe you would have been able to get it from is obviously Liberdistry. But Liberdistry is out of stock at the moment. They had a stock in, but they sold out fairly quickly. To make this guy look a little bit nicer, we're going to bring his eyebrows up. If his eyebrows were down, that very kind of concentrated look, he would have looked a little bit evil. So we want to make him look a little bit nicer. So I'm doing line right now first. I'm also trying to refrain myself from over detailing, because we are going to go through and add things like shade and darks and lights and stuff like that. So if I over detail stuff, it's really, first, again, not necessary, but two, it's going to take away from some of the design element, orientation of it. Graphically, value-wise, that sort of stuff. This is going to be the instrument coming down this way. I'm going to give him like multiple arms as well too. That'll be fun. So I'm going to bring this up real high. And what we'll do is have this article of clothing as if it's like he's unraveled it or taken it off from his left side. I'm just making it up as I go now. Okay. So what I'll do right there is like create a little shape to kind of show a sense of like where a shadow can go. I do want this sense of eeriness to it, almost something, again, fantastical, maybe abstract, but not too far. This is going to be his other hand over here. And just flow, move again. Don't tighten up, You don't have to over control it. It's not about perfection. You can say that, oh, the hand's too big or too small, or this is not the right angle, it's too long over here. It doesn't matter. Right now, we're just drawing because it's supposed to be fun. I understand if you're trying to produce a piece that is something for a client, or you have a specific sort of goal as to what it's supposed to do, then yeah, there's that level of control that you want, and things like accuracy, or certain quality levels, and what it's to be able to attain towards, and even just fighting your own sort of tendencies as well too. But at the same time, it's like, in certain experiences, sometimes it's best just to like create, see what happens. Jason's asking, what topic am I currently studying? Right now, I don't really have a topic that I'm studying per se. Um, the previous drawing I had done was, the kind of these figures in theology, like the Morning Star and Lucifer. I always liked, certain characters in theology, whether it's from myth or to current religions. Great stories, great, interesting characters. The fallen angel in Lucifer and the Morning Star is a very interesting character to me. In terms of just the written aspect of it, especially when it comes to like character creation and development. Learning from those sort of texts, I think, can have a lot of value to them. Like I said, I'm gonna give him like multiple hands and arms. See how that's like really weird and like crunchy looking? I don't care if it's like, oh, it's not the exact anatomy of that knuckle. It's like, no, you got 4 fingers. You got more than enough. Think less about that sense of wanting to just control everything exactly that you think it needs to be based on this concept of perfecting this image. It doesn't exist. Just move, just draw, just create. Something will happen. Now I know, there's going to be that mentality of, what if I don't like it? It's like, I don't think it's a good looking, production, or whatever it may be. Those sort of mentalities you'll have to like battle with all the time. It's just part of the, again, process of education and learning for yourself. Some don't get over it at all. It's not like, I'm not going to say that I don't care, but there's a time and a place for it. Right now, I'm just live streaming to just sketch for fun. There's no need for me to be worried about what it looks like, and be concerned about, is this going to be something that people will look at, and maybe they'll judge me. It's like, oh, you're not a this or this, or label that. It's like, it doesn't matter to me. Again, it's like, if I'm going to enjoy doing this, it'll be fine. And again, welcome for those of you that are here joining for the first time. Star, welcome. Eduardo, what is the value of, is asking, what is the value of gesture drawing in my opinion? How high in the priority list, is gesture drawing? He basically ignored it up till now because at the beginning it felt like it wasn't being useful. Well, I think this is where your personal educational venture and research and exploration will help potentially answer that very common question. To just keep it quick, do I think gesture has value in terms of its placement of your process in creating a visual image? Yes. Do I have specific sort of like descriptions as to what a gesture means and is supposed to do? Yes. Is that necessary to discuss right now? Not necessarily, because it's more about the general concept of it. Is it good to have gesture in your work? Yeah, I think so. But how do you know the proper way of doing it? There is no real I mean, you can find out standards in education and art and history of what people have done, and you can use that as a context and framework to judge whether or not you want to use it their way or not. But at the end of the day, then, from learning some of those standards, you got to be able to make your own educational sort of like, not guess, but sort of adaptations and infusions, or hybrids of things that kind of come to a pathway where it becomes your sort of need and use of a tool. And that's kind of the way you just have to look at it. That it is just a tool, like this pencil or this paper. Systems and mentalities and things that we all understand in art and education are all just tool sets. And so if there's some benefit within it, the only way you're going to be able to find out is just to sit and just kind of play with it yourself. Somebody can tell you, like me, it's like, yeah, gesture is good, do it for this, this, and this. Well, yeah, that's great, and I understand that you're looking for that because, well, you have more experience than me, I want to hear that. Well, yeah, I understand that too, but just because I say that, and you'll say, well, I've tried it a couple of times and you might not even agree with it. Well, then what was the point of asking? The point of asking is to say that there's a viable function there, and the answer is more about go and find out. Do it yourself, and don't look for some other's approval or validations and methods and things that you think are going to be useful because that person told you to. I'm in no position to tell you what you should or should not do. All I can say is what's a road traveled, and I think there's value to it. Go find out. Maybe it's fun. If you find it fun, keep going. Nolan's asking if my new book will have figure drawings. Not in the new book. We'll see in the future. Stayfly is asking if you wanted to go over these pencils with medium, which one would you recommend? Like a medium to paint over? You might have to specify the question. You can use like a matte medium, a gel medium, something like that. If we're gonna do like acrylic painting, in the past we would use a matte medium or gel mediums, which is to secure the painting and to create a base, and you can paint on top of that if you want, and layer more mediums if you want to. Sprays we could use for more dry graphite pencil drawing. So after this like initial drawing, I may spray it to secure it, and then I might do a lot more pencil work on top of that if you wanted to, and that's like a workable fixative you can go for. But usually the mediums of like an actual sort of like dense paste or something like this. Back in the day we use like a gel medium, mostly matte mediums. Phil's asking, do you have any hobbies or stuff that you like to do besides drawing? Tons. Mostly photography work is something I really enjoy. um, yeah, photo work is a lot of fun. I love sports cards. I love trading cards. So I'm a huge collector of things. I love being outdoors. Traveling is a huge aspect of it. Before this whole medical situation, traveling was a big aspect of me, kind of like day to day sort of function I would try to go for. Let's put another arm. I just had this like visual flash of him like holding a cup. The sharpener I am using is this one here. This is the Faber-Castell little sharpener. So I will sharpen the tool. Put another hand right there. And he's going to be sitting, so his legs are going to kind of splay out like this. Again, it's not like a super high angle. Just enough where you can kind of, as you go down from eye level down, it'll start to change the plane of perspective a little bit. Zoom out a little bit here. And then, welcome for sketching and drawing. Please do so. Sakamoto Day Star. I've only watched a few episodes of that, but I kind of stopped. Trakulia is asking, does the need to sketch in gesture and form go away naturally by training with the fine liner, and that leads to seeing the lines around the form? Sure, I guess it could, if that's maybe like kind of the intention of what you're looking for. Some people retain the gestural look or the process of developing a gesture to always have in their visual productions of whatever they're producing. Again, it depends upon your preference of process and how you want to make things as a sketch or drawing. I'll put a small little chair behind him, but let's continue on. I don't know, again, what this instrument's going to look like. It's just something I'm making up. I'm kind of reminded of those really long, like fiddle looking things from the Chinese sort of instruments. But because of this fantastical element, I'm making it look like old wood. This long sort of staff or something like that, strings coming across here, being held. I'll finish that up later. I'm going to expose his legs. As I go further down, there's going to be just mostly silhouette shape. Trying to do very less specific detail work. You know, there's elements of things of anatomy that you'll start to want to incorporate, which is why learning anatomical sort of, not details, but information is going to be helpful and something that you should be doing as artists, right? And in that situation where it's like, where do you begin? Do you start with something about shape and form, and then do you learn anatomy first, perspective first? There are those three archetypes I tend to talk about in education. The three trinity, basically, which is observational drawing, perspective, and figure drawing. So wherever you start, any one of those is a perfectly fine place to begin. Within each of those trinities, there are sub-tiers within them. Within the figurative drawing, is it specifically anatomy you begin with? Not necessarily. I would start with a drawing class on figure that goes more to shape and form, learning proportion really well, and then you start to go into an anatomy class, right? So right now, like things like this line right here, you know, this sartorius muscle. Sartorius muscle coming in, here's a quad coming down to, you know, the patella, down to the tibia, you know, the calf muscle. So these are just like indications that suggest that anatomy. And I'm not necessarily trying to do an anatomical study, and nor is this like 100% like true as to what exactly the anatomy is supposed to look like. It's supposed to give you the indication idea, or even what I use as words, the indication of it, suggestion, to make you understand that there's some anatomical information there. Whether it's real or not, it just gives you the concept of it, right? I'm going to go back up to some of the questions. And again, if I missed the question because I'm scrolling down, I apologize. You can ask again. Bingo Bongo was asking, how often do you use directly a pen for sketching and why? Often in terms of like most of the time. This is my, in terms of pencil drawings, I haven't done a pencil sketch this pretty much this whole year except for the other day. So this was the most recent pencil drawing for this year, and you're looking at the second pencil drawing I've done of this year. So most of the year I've been drawing mostly with pen. And again, why? Mainly because of connection to my education and also to what I teach. Any intuitive perspective tips? Really learning more from sight and observation, right? If you want to learn to intuitively, visually capture perspective, learn to look a lot. Well, you might look at things every day, but it doesn't mean you're mentality-wise focused on trying to interpret that information visually. So that means you should look and draw, right? So the observation and sketching is one of the trinities of education. Observational drawing is connected to the class that I teach, dynamic sketching. So it's an observational drawing class. It may not be like a very beginner class, but it's within that tier. So any observational drawing that you can do, whether it's like still life, right? Things you set up on a table, that's part of also observational drawing. Doesn't matter the subject matter. It's more the mentality of the approach of what you're trying to accomplish, which is getting used to interpreting what you see in front of you in observation. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. The reason why drawing in observation is so challenging and why most of the general population cannot do it or would try to and fail and have a difficulty overcoming that and wanting to stick with it is because the process and what's going on in your brain to do this is about scaling. So as I look at something, let's say it's like this pencil sharpener in front of me, and as I look at it and I drew this thing on a piece of paper, I am scaling this physical object down to a smaller thing. Scaling it down, I have to somehow still retain proportion, understand the shape, the sense of three dimension, the light and shadow, and that's all based on your interpretive skills of what you're seeing and observing. Very challenging stuff. Just the simple act of scaling down, though, scaling up or down, massively hard to do. Gideon's asking, is a silhouette first workflow good for design? It's one way, but not the only way. Is it good? Sure. But again, there's many other ways to approach it. Whether it's a deconstructed iteration of something, smaller version, working with something bigger, experimenting with different sort of silhouettes and shapes or material as well too. There's many ways to approach it. This little bug. It's attracted to the lights. We'll give him these big slippers. Probably can't see very well. Sorry about that. As I stated, we're using a pencil, but there is no erasing needed. Because we're all about trying to get into this idea of line confidence. Is erasing bad? No, it is not. But this stems from my education of wanting to commit to the visual, commit to the line. Line confidence. And if the line doesn't work, learn from it. Was it the movement? Was it the pressure? Was it the stroke? Was it the, variation in the line? Should I have gone thick to thin, thick to thick, lighter stroke? Kiwi's asking, how do you eventually stop using a reference? You shouldn't. You can vary it in terms of dependency of use, but it should never really go away. Right now, it feels like everything you draw is just copying someone else's work, and I eventually want to post your own. Well, there's no reason why you can't do both. You can continue to study other people's work or references of photographs as you continue posting your own work. So the idea right now is to incorporate this production of your own work more immediately. You're already doing the one thing, which is looking at other people's stuff and absorbing it and producing it. Let's say like mimicry, right? But there's nothing wrong with that. There's no point in which you should stop this one sort of approach of technique to then move into some other thing. Because if you're going to ask yourself at some point I'll be ready, I can stop looking at other people's stuff and just start making my own thing. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. There's no point in which you end and somehow you just know that, hey, I can now do my own stuff. You're never going to think that, because you're always going to think, I need to practice more. I should keep studying that person's work more. I don't feel confident enough to do my own thing. You don't allow yourself to do it anyways, even if you were proficient enough. And more than likely, I bet you're proficient enough already now to do it. But you won't allow yourself to. So the best thing to do at the moment is to practice, experiment, fail, try, producing your own stuff that you like to produce, inspired by other things, whether real or imagined by other people's work. But it should never be some sort of linear, sort of stacking of work. It's just so many different paths to take and different ways you build that up as a foundation. It falls over, you got to build it again. There is no set path. And you might think there is within education, but those are standards. But within that also, your path will not be the same as everybody else's. But what you can do is to just give yourself a chance now. But don't think that you're not ready just yet, because more than likely you're probably perfectly fine and suited to do so. Let's give him a little bench here. Here it is, self art. Let's go up to the top of the instrument here. So we have a drawing now completely, properly blocked in, top to bottom, full figure. Recommendation is always go to full figure. I will still place a couple things around. I thought about putting like a little primate monkey here. Let's put a table on this side actually. Because he needs to put the cup somewhere. We'll put a little pitcher of whatever, maybe alcohol. More cups. Sorry, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Missed your question. Ask again. Flame, welcome. Could I talk a little bit more about Art Center? Is it a viable option for something like a MFA, a Master's in Fine Art, or other after colleges path for the art industry? Are there any that exist? So there's a two-parter there, which is one, what do I think about colleges like Art Center? And what do I think about master's programs, right? Whatever school you may go to, and like a post degree from a bachelor's. I never got a master's degree. I went to Art Center back in 2001, and I graduated in 2004. I got a bachelor's in fine arts, I think. I can't remember anymore. That was 20 plus years ago. Gosh, how long ago was that? Jeez. It was a while back. Anyways, and was it helpful to go to a college like this back in the time when I was, learning in education? Yes, because that was the only thing I could do, right? The difference 20 years ago to now, obviously, is just the availability and the abundance of the information that's out there regarding what we do in our field. Whether it's a, more design-oriented sort of approach, an independent artist sort of approach, or a more traditionalist approach. There's just a huge quantity of just content, whether like online and streaming like this, or things like Gumroads and Patreons, subscription-based schools to live schools, the schools that like I teach, and then of course the actual university that still exists today, and where the numbers of actual prospective students attending and signing up are still going up. And you might think that this system, this traditional old system of college, who goes to that stuff now? It's a dead system, right? It costs too much money, and there's no, for what it seems like for a lot of young people, I'm sure there's no jobs out there. And these schools probably can't even teach me all the things I need to learn, and I can get everything online. So why would I go to a college in the first place, right? Yet at the same time, the numbers are going up in terms of attendance, because I'm still connected to people that teach at schools like that. And I hear through the grapevine, It doesn't mean it's still 100% positive. It doesn't mean that you go to those places that you're going to be guaranteed some form of opportunity or job. Never at some point today, even 20 years ago or more beyond, was ever that the case, right? The fact of life is you gather skills, whether through an apprenticeship, learning from a single person like a blacksmith back in the 14th century, or you're learning education from, these colleges and systems that have been established over the past, hundreds of years. And today, where the online approach is more the modernist side of mentality, the system is still the same. It's like you try to gather your skills and you get out there and try to make it, right? No one hands you that guarantee. You make it yourself. Now you might think, well, there were more chances back then or something like that. I don't agree with that. I mean, there's tons of chances right now. Yeah, we can maybe argue this idea where industry is failing and not doing very well, but industry is changing. It's adapting. It's morphing into something that's never been done, because there's new things out there all the time. New technologies, new sort of like interests and trends and different sort of customers and different ways to get that product to that customer. So, as the industry has become stagnant, not because of its content, but because of the system and ways that they produce things, that's why it's falling apart, right? But then the creator, who's a part of these systems to help generate these products, you might think, but there's no more opportunities now for us. Like technology's taking over and AI is taking over, and I'm not going to get a job and I can't make it. I'm sorry, but that's been the case for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the individual creator has to find some other way to move with this morphing and directing of things. I'm not saying you have to keel over and take it, and that you shouldn't fight back against some of the stuff that is on the precipice of pushing all these artists out. Of course, your voice is important, and to claim, these traditions and ways of how industry has worked for us. So of course, AI, shouldn't be the standard, and it does produce terrible stuff in terms of quality, and it's rampant, and it's not very, in my opinion, logical financially, even for companies. It may be cheaper, but it's not really cheaper in actuality, because there's so much more, like you have to go back and fix things, because it doesn't really produce stuff that well just yet. So you're still hiring artists to fix what you produce in the AI stuff. So it makes no sense to me. In any case, you, the artist, still have to challenge yourself to grow beyond that system. Everybody wants to fit inside that puzzle, but really the bigger question is, why do you want to do this in the first place? If you want to create and generate stuff that can attract people, but is also inspiring to others, and something that you enjoy doing because it's storytelling or visualizing or otherwise, there's nothing that's stopping you from doing that. Now I understand, it's like, but I need to now financially be okay. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but artists, we come from this position where unfortunately we're always seen as less than, even though we make some of the biggest differences. But that's just the nature of our culture, the nature of our society. The most common person wouldn't really see the artist as someone of a high sort of status of individual that deserves this sort of like validation or support or encouragement. Most people today still see the artist as a starving artist, so I'm sure it still feels that way from what many people too. But like I said, in this current day and age, I think there are ways for us as individual artists to be able to either come together or independently make it, even financially. It's like, I can't use myself as an example because, well, people will argue that, again, myself, you've had the time. It's like, you've done this for 20 years and you're now going online, you can do that sort of stuff. You have an audience. But it's not like I just graduated and had this audience. I had to build it for decades. So people that are coming out, why would you be guaranteed this audience to just take what you've been given, or what you're giving to them? So you're going to have to start from zero as well. There are many variables to this, obviously, in terms of like, competition and interest from a customer or whatever the case is. But anyways, do I still think it then viable to go to a college like Art Center? Yes, I do. However, I would not do it the same way I did 20 years ago, because that also would not work, right? We have to adapt to the times. The one thing you first have to understand is that if you do go to a college or university, and if you think, a piece of paper that you graduate with, your diploma, master's degree or otherwise, even you can get a doctorate in something, is somehow going to make a difference in terms of people looking at you and being like, hey, you're now this, sort of reputable, valuable individual within the field of art and design, and will buy stuff from you just because you have a piece of paper showing them that in a frame. It's like, hey, I have this, master's degree in art. Come take my class. Nobody cares, right? Companies won't care. People won't care. What they care about is what you're producing on the page, right? So your portfolio, what you produce in products of art and illustration or whatever you like to make for storytelling is the selling point, not this educational sort of framed piece, of somehow you think that's going to somehow convince people that are out there that you are, that they should be confident that they can, invest into you. But that's difficult in itself because, of course, certain older generations would have no sense of concept of that, because in their time, obviously, you go to a school, A, you finish that school and get a degree, B, and then you go out there and find a job, C. And then you buy a house and you do all this stuff, right? Which doesn't apply to us anymore. So it's about being able to build as much skill as you can and build as much network and to build a huge community of individuals that you're going to be able to get all these potential pathways and crosses of opportunity, which you'll then be able to jump on and adapt to your sort of skill set. And you're not going to get the things that you want to get. That's also not how the industry works. Just because you finish school and you want to work at this company, no, it's not going to happen that way. Some company else might come to you and say, hey, we saw your work and we do this stuff. And you're like, well, I don't want to do that. No, thanks. I'm going to go over here. But maybe that would have been your in to just jump over to something else. So skills are going to be what's important. But to build skill takes a massive amount of time, right? Especially in this field of art and design. It's no joke. Everybody understands here how difficult this stuff is. But now they have thousands of, now hundreds of thousands of people interested. The competition is going up. And this very dreadful sense of feeling like you got to be perfect in this skill set then tends to create a lot of, sort of unwanted mentalities. But hopefully, what you can do is within that very traumatic educational experience, find something within it that keeps you locked in, keeps you there, because it's no longer just about finding some financial security, which is important, but also about finding an identity of you and why you are here to create. And hopefully what that does is connect you more to individuals, people, maybe even to your family again. If you're not so deeply connected to them, hopefully you do have that sort of support. But if you don't, hopefully it shows that your investment, your discipline, your confidence as it's boosting, reflects as well too, right? For me, my family was very supportive, but they weren't fully confident. They never vocalized it. That's the one difference, I think, for my family to maybe some others. Even though I come from an Asian family, my family could have vocalized, hey, we don't know if you're going to do well, so maybe you should go do this. Never said that to me. But they were thinking it because they told me after that. When I finished school and started working and years went by, then my parents expressed, like, we were kind of unsure. We still don't really know what you do. We didn't know how you're going to make it out there. But they just let me find out, So I was fortunate in that sense. But anyways, I still think, a school like that can be viable. But do I think a master's program then is going to be something good? I mean, is it a bad idea? It's not that it's a good or a bad idea. Experience is experience. It can be a good thing. If you have the financial means and the time, go do it. But, if you feel like, well, it's a risk and I don't really have that kind of money, but I think I need to because that's the only way I'm going to make it. Nah, you don't need it. Actually, before I zoom in, I'm going to sketch out a couple more things in here. I'm going to put a little monkey in the back because I want some more little things around. Dressing up the scene. Anyways, I don't know if that explanation, I guess, makes any sense, but it does in terms of that question about education to some degree. But going back real quickly in terms of like the whole college experience, the reason why I still say yes though is because this is what I tell my students all the time, I would take advantage of the systems. I just wouldn't graduate. I would just go there and just maybe spend a year or two, it would still cost a lot of money, but I'm not going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. I would spend enough to get a year's enough of like discipline and foundation and connection to people, and then I'll leave. And I'll go online and do a lot of online classes, which are going to be cheaper, work part-time, pay off my loan when I need to as well, and then slowly build and spend about probably a good 6-7 years educating myself. Well, in terms of the blacksmith, I am planning to do not only another run, but I want to make the second book. So it's just in a line of backlog. This whole, kind of medical situation that I had this year really kind of put a hamper on development. Because I'm still trying to produce my next book right now, which is the Dynamic Bible 2. After that one, I do have another book that I want to make first, which is this kind of creature journal. And then I will do the blacksmith, number 2. Ferris is saying, parents are telling you need to develop other skills. Would I say development of other skill sets are important, or just art and focusing on the craft? No, I think having various other skills are very important. And I learned about that being in an art school. And the way I learned that was because I moved outside of my department and went into other departments. It can be art related to some degree, But even if it isn't, I still think it can be very valuable. Someone asked about writing. You know, is create writing can be creative as well too, of course, right? But other fields that are not creative, let's say like research, history, stuff like that, journalism. Those can be not as creative per se. Maybe there is aspect of it there, but I think those things can be a lot of important skills and information about how to research and how to learn and how to look for things, which I think could be great. But anything else within the creative field, for sure, instant. Again, things like photography. If I'm a sketch artist or someone who likes to draft things out on pencil and pen, I'll go to sculpture. Or I talked about dance, acting, music, great stuff. Phil does mention, you would argue that the college does open some paths into companies through internship programs, which are impossible to get otherwise. And I would highly agree with that. That is maybe only one of the other reasons why sticking with the college does have a certain benefit, which it does give potential sort of like collaborations within industries and companies or individuals where you as a full-time student can get to. Also things like visas, if you're international, is an aspect of it, but right now the government, it doesn't look highly upon international people, which is unfortunate and a horrible aspect of this current, sort of regime, I would say. But, I think that still exists, obviously. But definitely that sort of like internship thing, you'd only be able to do as a full-time student. As an independent, sort of self-education, that kind of stuff you would not get access to. And is it important to get access to stuff like that? Internships, working within companies, yeah, it does. Is it possible to get internships outside as an independent? It is possible. It's not impossible. But there are certain industries that require you to be a full-time student, primarily animation. If you work in games is a bit more open format. You could be just an individual out there, not part of a school, and potentially come into an internship. But then that's a bit more about who you know, right? Again, it depends on the industry you're working in. At Art Center, if you're working in like the design fields of like product design, transportation design, that's where like internships are massive. Those are kind of mandatory to get out there and make it. But as illustrators and comic artists or storytellers or people that work in games or animation, got it, finally. Internships are very helpful. Animation definitely has a big sort of like, push towards that. But in games, internships are not really that big. Just as saying you want to do a graphic design that has a co-op attached to it. It's a good plan. I think graphic design is a great field. John's asking if I could go back to where when I was learning, what would you practice differently? Well, that's what I kind of mentioned earlier. I would still go through the same channels of college at first, spend about a year or two there. But this is in a present moment, right? If I started over today, I would take advantage of the traditional systems of universities, but then leave and take advantage of the online sort of approach of self-education. But I'd want to build my sort of like foundations and fundamentals inside of a university first. Because there's a lot there that you can build towards. Let's say like internships, right? Or just connections to instructors and teachers and people that I think would be really important sort of networks that I benefited from greatly for myself. Another monkey. These little short tail ones. Jira Wolf, yes, we are doing a pencil drawing. Okay, so the drawing overall is relatively done. You get a sense of it now. This multi-armed figure playing an instrument. What we're going to do at this moment now, though, we're going to switch over to now going to some shading and shadow play. I'm just going to stick with this 8B pencil, and I may move up to my 9B because I really want to play with this one. I want to see how this Mitsubishi pencil works. We may do some hard hits with the... Actually, you know what? This is a 6B. Well, we'll play with all, so we'll see how it goes. Let's see. What I generally like to do with pencil... Sometimes it's fine to like work, kind of dark to light. Sometimes I like to go to midtones, like an even value, and then go dark and then light. You can go light to then dark as well too. So that's like kind of the system in terms of value creation in this sort of image making. In this case, what I'll probably end up doing is first start getting a suggestion of like lights at first, go to like a midtone, and then hit my darks at the end. So I'll probably go from that. So I'm going to think about lights, go to my mid values and my darks. Again, I can go light, then dark, and then medium, but it's your choice and process. Okay. In any case, zoom in. I'm going to start up here in this area, kind of work my way down. Lee's asking, how do I make poses loose and not stiff when I draw from the imagination? Draw more from life, right? Draw more from life and build a visual vocabulary of poses that you feel are very loose, and then use them as a framework to develop stuff from the imagination. But also pose yourself. This whole drawing that we did earlier, I was kind of like in the motion. I was trying to like figure out where things were. Seth is asking, how do I learn to let go of what the industry wants of me and just be true to yourself? You're afraid, as is everyone else going through this whole process, which is a very natural feeling and tendency. And so, it's like you got to kind of embrace that aspect. It won't really go away. But, it's like I can't necessarily paint this picture of fantasy by telling you that, just be yourself, do what you want to do, and you'll get hired in the industry by some chance and network. I mean, it's possible, but I'm going to be also real, which is if your intention is to work in a company, in the industry of a corporate field that produces creative products, video games and animations and comics even, right? Illustration work for children's books or whatever the case is. There has to be this sense of conformity to a certain level, because you have to go through a system where there is seniority, there are positions, you're getting paid to do a certain amount of job. There's a corporate aspect to it, because whether it's a small company or a big company, it's still a company, right? And you have to follow set guidelines within an industry standard. So in that sense, being able to adapt and to be able to work within that system is important. What that means is the skills that you are learning is learned to be used towards adapting to that industry. So then really my style and the work that I want to produce is really not as important in that sense of like education. I have to learn skills, right? And in those skills, I may develop my portfolio pieces out of school, which may be my work and my ideas. But once I then go to a company, your style doesn't matter. Your style that you're also even producing should be able to be parallel to what the company is trying to do. So when I'm applying to a company, obviously the portfolio that I make should align with their stuff as a visual identity, right? Because why would I apply for, let's say, like DreamWorks or some, TV animation company like Nickelodeon or something like this, and I had a portfolio, a bunch of like military realistic, photo batch stuff, right? They would look at you like, this is not what we do. Get out of here. So your work has to reflect what they do. So that means you might have to make multiple portfolios that might apply to certain different sort of brands and companies, right? And sometimes you got to make your work pretty much just like theirs. It's just the way it goes. And then from there, it's like you got to be able to adapt to the projects that are be given to you and do them in a timely manner. And it's a 9-to-5 job. And it can be creative. You can learn a lot of skills, meet some great people, and it can be a lot of fun. And some people very much prefer this. But, if you're inclined to just, wanting to create for yourself and for your own sort of like sake of, I don't know, I guess, creative journey and to build your own audience, you can do it straight out of school. So why would I go to an industry or company in the first place? Well, the reason why is because it's important to learn within the company about things like sticking up for yourself, right? Being able to socialize, understanding the system itself, so that you can then have a framework of why you don't want to be there at all. And then moving on to your own independent work, right? Having context is important. So even if you wanted to become an independent creator, I think still experiencing the corporate field has a lot of benefit. Learn the system to know that you don't want to be in that, right? But then your opinion then really has backing because you've been through it. By the way, it's like if it, a sense of self, not losing your kind of like creative identity and stuff like that, it doesn't really ever go away either. I mean, you can let it happen that way, but even as you're working inside of a company or industry, you shouldn't stop making your own stuff. It's just that you do it on your own time. And so getting too complacent and comfortable, that then becomes usually the coffin in the nail situation. Because then time goes by. You might be in there like 10, 15, 20 years in a company, and then you become a shadow of yourself, and you lose that creative edge. So that can happen. I've seen that happen. But that's why you got to be very sharp and disciplined about that. It's the reality of all corporate fields, right? Nah, thank you again from South Africa. Appreciate that. Is there a specific watercolor brand you prefer for my drawings? I prefer a company. Oh my gosh, the brand name. Oh, I had it in my head and it disappeared. Holbein's one of them. It's a Japanese one, but it's a European brand. I apologize. My memory all of a sudden went blank on me. If you're looking for something in the beginning, like a more entry-level tool, Winsor Newtons are fine. Holbein is a really good one from Japan, as I said. But is it in here? I apologize. I forgot the name of it. It's a Austrian German brand watercolor. Maybe somebody else remember. my memory went blank on me. Greetings from Germany. Awesome having you here. 4 a.m. over on that side. John's asking, what advice would I give to artists who feel stuck in the comparison with others? That's not going to go away either. Embrace that aspect of it. Don't let it be mindset-wise, it can very easily spiral into something much more negative, because it becomes more about a sense of envy of what they have and what you don't have. But the way it has to be seen is not as a competition of who is better and worse. It's supposed to give you a sense of pathway that's possible. What that person is doing, skill set wise or otherwise, career wise, whatever, that's possible. That person's doing it. And it gives you a sense of potential direction. Not to be that individual, but to, as you're burning your own path, having this sense of want and understanding of where it can apply to aim for, right? In the beginning, of course, in education, that sort of comparison of like skill set is very natural. That is also a part of it as well too. And does that ever go away as well? Not really, but it doesn't become as large of a voice as you become a bit more mature and experienced. If anything else, you start to celebrate and encourage others to continue to elevate what they're doing. Because what happens eventually, you find confidence in your own voice. And then it's no longer about trying to beat that person. It's about trying to work with that person, right? Ahmed, it's going well. Thank you. Appreciate your question. Irrelevant is asking, which masters or comics do you recommend to learn cross-hatching? I mean, there's so many, and I have a giant list, and I could spend hours talking about artists and people that inspired me for the stuff like that, whether it's specifically for cross-hatching or just artists in general. But within the world of cross-hatching, if I just could name a few, I mean, some of these names are very sort of like repetitive from other artists that would usually use them or explain them. It's because they're the top tier of what they do, right? Schminke, thank you, Flame. But for me, one of the obvious that goes to is Mobius. Jean-Gerard Mobius has this very fun way of being able to hatch with form really well. He knows how to play with scale beautifully. From him, a natural progression that an artist who is also an amazing professional, inspired by Mobius and kind of adapted to his own way, would be Terada, Katsuya Terada. Someone asked about him earlier. Kind of what I'm doing right now is a general medium value, and I'm kind of suggesting where lights are. This is a simple top light. So this line right here is a line to divide light to shadow, but I'm doing mid-tone shadows. So just doing a simple fill, one directional. Light, real light. Inside these more concave areas or cavities, just filling in. I'm not really worried about like, blending and softness right now. We'll handle that later on. I'm trying to think about graphically how we want to separate stuff. I want this arm to come out so the shadow back over here darker, right, in the clothing. I'm thinking of top-down light so there'll be a shadow underneath his head. I want this hand and this instrument to pop out behind him, shadow shape. I want this arm to kind of also fall into its own silhouette so I can read it better from a distance. Notice all this in between area here, less detail, right? So I'm making these decisions quickly. And a lot of it's obviously done through experience. Don't be afraid to lose details. When it comes down to these like graphical shadow shapes, trying to retain detail is going to be another death nail. It's okay to just cover stuff up in the shadow. Think more to shapes. But yeah, Mobius, Tarada. Lastly, I would say is Bernie Wrightson, self-taught, amazing draftsman, illustrator. If I just rattled names off, maybe Charles Dana Gibson, Heinrich Klei, Sergio Topi. These are the common names I use all the time. Franklin Booth. But these were the illustrators of the period of time where this was like late 1800s to early 1930s, 40s, A lot of them American, few European. Main concept is asking, you just started drawing regularly and you get stiff wrists often. In that situation, breaks are huge, right? So right now for me, it's like I'm holding the pencil at a distance, of course, but as I'm drawing and sketching, usually my hand is kind of resting on something. It's on the sketchbook right now. People wonder, like, how do you not smudge anything? It's like, obviously I'm placing it where there's no drawing. So holding at a distance really helps a lot. And then a real light grip. If you're choking your pencil or pen, you're going to start to get a lot more sort of like strain and almost like arthritic sort of conditions in your knuckles. And it can also hinder your wrist. Learning to be able to move from multiple points in your body as you sketch and draw is important. At this smaller scale, and more what I'm doing right now is more finger motion to wrist area. In these initial start of the drawing, it was more to the elbow from the shoulder. Hand is still placed down, but as I go smaller and smaller and smaller, it goes down to the fingertips of the wrist. But being able to obviously use your entire body is important. I'm standing at the moment, as I said. So I'm not really hunching over, right? I'm not slouching. I'm just standing. So sitting can have some, it's good, it's fine, but it can also have its downfalls. But from there, a lot of breaks become very, very helpful. So I would draw maybe at the most an hour or two at the maximum. Then take like a half an hour break. It's another one. From there, any sort of like physical exercises can be really good. Stretches that come before, afterwards. If you have some sort of precondition, any injuries, a pull, strain, something like that. Icing can help. Heat can help depending on the injury itself. Again, physical therapies, exercises are really good. Keeping it limber, right? In the past, I would do a lot of hand, forearm, wrist exercises. I don't have it here at the table. I thought it was something there, but no, I don't have anything. But normally I would have exercise stuff that would be like, power grips or stuff like this. I have this one gyro sphere that you hold on, you kind of spin it, and you start to move it around. It kind of strengthens your forearm. But any sort of physical exercise really helps a lot. Definitely just kind of continuing to really not stretch, but stretch and push and pull, not strain, that is. A lot of your joints important. Moving, because the problem is when you're in that position of drawing, your hand is locked in a position for so long, there's no blood flow. So you got to let go and just get that blood flow going, right? Blood flow will help the most. Too much stability in position for too long is not ideal. We'll just take to a certain point. Um, I'll try to finish this. I think we've gone about an hour and a half. Yeah, exactly an hour and a half. Probably end up going for maybe half an hour more. And we'll see how it goes. I'm only going to focus on the character for now. All the other stuff around it, I'm probably going to touch upon it later on. Let's go a little bit closer to the character. So I can only get too close or it blurs out in terms of camera focus. Let's play with this 9B. This is a 9B. This is the Mitsubishi pencil. And we got a donation from Payroll. Appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. New classes and when. So for me, right now I am on break in September due to my whole sort of like physical sort of conditioning. And classes will begin next month in October. Registration will begin this month at some point. So I'm planning maybe even this week to start putting together my registration info. So new classes will start up at the midpoint of October. This is where I'm going to start to slow down and really take benefit of the pencil, which is being able to, control transitions, gradients. This is where I'm going to start to hit my darks a little bit more intensively and blend. The area of interest will obviously go into the upper portion of the body. Still playing with line of thick and thin. Don't be afraid to lose details. This is 9B, so it's pretty soft. So underneath the head, I'm going to push it a little bit darker to frame his head. What I like about this pencil is for those kind of like dark accents, but for fill like this, I may stick with my 8B. I like it, but it might be just a little bit too soft for me right now. The 8B to 9B is not a huge difference, but definitely that 9B is much softer. The type of lead is different. So I'm going to just kind of group all this in the shadow. And use these darks to help suggest parts of the clothing. For those of you that are popping in right now, yes, we're doing a pencil drawing. I'll probably stick with, I get through these like phases. Sometimes I'll play with, different mediums and stuff like that, and I'll just kind of stick with it for a little bit. I might end up doing another couple of pieces of pencil here and there, and then more than likely I'll just go back to my pens. It's just nice to have a little bit of change of pace at times and playing with different media. I'll do the same thing with digital. It's like do a couple digital pieces and just come back to my pens. In terms of hatching direction that I'm making right now, what's determining that is more just some of the fold of the clothing, and it's kind of built towards two aspects, which is one, kind of this intuitive nature that people have asked before. It's like, is it just made up? Is it based on something? Are you using observation? At first I would use observation to really help build this, and then it's the observations of other people's work, their aesthetics, their hatching motions, whatever the case is. And then it's also then about my intuitive sense of flow, like which direction do I want to go in. And this is all based on movement of line. Obviously I'm filling all this area dark, but it's still more of a hatching kind of motion. I'm not softly trying to blend. It's blending with line. Kind of working with it in these sort of like more planar sort of directions. John had a question about uploading art, but you're afraid of online criticism. How do you deal with it? Turn off the comments. Don't post for comments. Post because you enjoy sharing your work. People happen to follow, and if they even do criticize because you left the comments on, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't actually impact your process of flow because you don't know who those people are. They have no framework of context of their skills in terms of where they come from and who they are and what their levels of status is. So their words shouldn't make a difference in the first place. Now, granted, it's easy said than done. When somebody makes a comment, it sticks out. You think about it, kind of hurts and stings. So, but that also then has to be built up through thickening your skin. This is why education becomes important, right? As you go through education, you go through a system where that criticism is a natural part of your growth. As you show it to other people, you show it to instructors, you show it to peers, they are going to say something about it. And building up a thick skin is a part of that sort of development. So it's like if you go through independent learning, unfortunately, that aspect of it is not really sort of like a part of your sort of like foundational build-up. Unfortunately, this is where going to more of a established system like a school can maybe give you a bit more. I'm not saying you can't really find it online. You will find definitely very forward, kind of like sort of not hard, but definitely straight to the point instructors in some cases that can give you good feedback. I'm not talking about instructions where they kind of tear you apart kind of thing, but you still need at least some sort of like back and forth constructive criticism to help you improve, right? So that's why, of course, I would seek out that sort of experience when you can, if you can. This is where really working with other people helps. Like having friends that are the art, that can be other artists as well too, really helps a lot. Because having other eyes and having other words is critical. Now, again, if you can't afford or find those sort of opportunities, just putting yourself online out there is going to maybe sort of invite that sort of criticism. You might be able to build your thick skin to that eventually as well too. But just know this, that whatever the comments are, it's not the end of the world, you know, because it literally could just be some random person out there that you have no idea who it is, and you will never see them again, you know. And the comment, you can just delete. But as I said earlier, just turn them off. If you're going there to seek out sort of like comments for validation only, you're not going to get it. And nor should that be your mindset. It's nice to find like-minded people, though. You know, people that can be encouraging. And by the way, you can get the complete, you know, opposite flip side experience to this, which is you'll find a very positive community. People that will encourage you. Keep going. It's great stuff. We want to see more of it. But then I think the mindset is like, oh no, now there's pressure. Now we got to perform. You know, it's like now we got to do a good job. But everything is always so like, you put it on yourself most of the times, right? So it's really you fighting your own sort of critical mind, your own sense of perfectionism, and your own voice that's so loud. That usually what kind of kills the drive for many individuals. And that's another area that has to be then overcome. Gerard's asking, where should I focus first? Drawing, proportion, anatomy, foreshortening, shading, all of it. You don't focus on one. You're not supposed to. You focus on a multitude of things. And it sounds impossible. Well, it is, which is why you'll fail at it. And through that failure and sticking with it, you get a little bit better. Because your understanding and familiarity of the concepts you start to get introduced to. And as you get introduced to them, it is your task to bring them together as an actual tool to implement to your visuals. But the only way to use them properly is to keep doing it. This was part of the clothing here. Won't be easy. It's not guaranteed. You may not make it, but that's life. You know, how many students have I interacted with in multiple levels of experience, whether it's like a college or a university, going to international workshops, to teaching my own classes, where they have not made it. How many that in percentage of people? I mean, you're probably talking about more than half, if not a larger percentage than that try and don't make it. And it's not always their due to their actions. Sometimes it's environmental. Sometimes it's life throwing it at them that way. Other times it is them, And it sounds a little bit dreary. It's like, oh, shoot, then why should I even try? It's because everybody has the opportunity. Everybody has at least the allowance to try it. If that's something you've always been wanting to pursue, go for it. But just because there is a potential chance of not making it shouldn't stop you, because there is a flip side to that coin. That there is also a large population of people I've come across who've done amazingly well. I just come from that realist, always that point of view. I think it's important to talk about it all, not just the nice side of it, but it's hard. It is hard. But I do hope for the best for all of you. That is why I do what I do, so that at least I can give at least some channel of advice, of direction, just to not to safeguard people. I'm not here to protect people. I don't want to. I actually want people to go through those hardships. It's the only way to become somewhat successful and adaptable to what you want to do. If I kind of told you all the things that you should not do and avoid, problems that I've seen or done myself, one, it doesn't apply because that's my life. But two, it's like, it makes no sense of why I want to protect you against that. because it made me who I am, right? But when you're going through it, you're always looking for, like, I gotta get that shortest path. I gotta go now. It's just, again, youth, I guess, to a certain point. Maybe more just about our natural progression, education, growth. What inspires me lately? Um, a lot of entertainment, games, movies, shows, books, comics. A lot of the same media that I grew up with as a kid. I just finished Sandman 2, the second season. It was okay. I liked the first season a lot. The characters are great from the comics, which is why I did the whole, Lucifer character, inspired by that version of the show. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. Nathaniel's asking, how do I like to sharpen and maintain my pencils? Well, I'm just using a Faber-Castell sharpener. Okay, nothing fancy. Back in school, we use charcoals and we use a razor to kind of, like, get the actual length and the lead we want it to be. That's great too. But for these kind of like wood pencils, like graphite, I tend to not do that. For charcoal, we would, but for graphite, we just sharpen it. Someone's asking, how much do I enjoy the process of this sketch right now? You recently started to wonder about the balance of fun and grind and art skills. For me, I find this very entertaining. It may not seem like it. I don't come off as a very vocally sort of expressive individual. In a lot of ways over my life, people have always commented I'm very robotic, very monotone, very even keel, low key, it's like, and I'm probably still very much that way. So I'm not going to be very vocal on being very vibrant and enthusiastic on things. And I can say a word or two, but at the end of the day, it's like, that's just the nature of who I am. But I will say that verbally, I find this to be fascinating, entertaining. I'm falling into it. It's the thing where it's like, it feels very natural, It puts me in a mentality of state where it's very calm too. What I tell most students is that drawing for me, which is I think the way it is for most people, is this process of what you guys might do is that what you are producing is taking away from you, right? Which is why at the end of it, you feel exhausted, mentally, physically, maybe even spiritually, philosophically. You might be exhausted. I can't do anymore. I need to take a break. I got to do something else. And then stimulate myself to give myself enough energy and fuel through consuming media and comics and books and other cases, that creative juice, to then get enough energy to do it again. I don't need to do that because this, what I'm doing now, doesn't take from me. It gives to me. It gives a lot. And at the end of these sessions, I'm not like, oh man, that was a long session. I feel so tired. I'm enthusiastic. I want to draw more. But the reason why I don't is because I got to go to sleep or I have to have dinner. I got to take care of myself in other ways. If I could somehow live in this bubble where time didn't exist and I wasn't affected by aging and other life things, and I could just draw endlessly, I would love that. This concept of like being an immortal, which usually is seen in like media of entertainment as like a curse, right? Everyone thinks that living forever would be a great thing. But in the storytelling of, the consequence of stuff like that is that, well, you lose more than you really gain. But as artists, it'd be like, I want to see what happens next. No, I want to draw more things. I want to create more stuff. The idea of living forever actually sounds very appealing in some ways. Story. That was that character in Sandman that was like that. He was given immortality, right? Through like a bet from Death and Morpheus. Any good tips on how to get your proportions to match up with your references better? Repetition. Thumbnailing like crazy. Do multiple iterations as you get closer and closer to it, because you'll get, poor results in the beginning. And as you become more familiar as to what you produce, you get closer to its accuracy through trial and error. There are actual, technical things you could do. Some people would project it, you would trace it. Some people would grid it, transfer it, There's many different things to do with that. Lightbox it if you want to. But in terms of direct, sort of like eyeing a transfer, repetition. Ferris is asking, am I familiar with Marco's work? Yeah. Framed Ink. I don't know the guy. His work is great. Hey, Juliana. Welcome. Thank you for the donation. Hope you're doing well. When my class will be available will be mid-October. October, let me see the date real quickly. October 14th, maybe the first day. So we have about maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe about a month left over still. Registration probably will begin at the end of this month. But I hope you're well. Thank you for your comments earlier, by the way. I've gotten some of your messages. It's just been, I've been trying to take it easy. So I haven't really responded to a lot of people just yet. But I have been getting the messages, so thank you. Ahmed again question. I have a few mentors that you may know of. Ron, I know Ron. Chris, I know Chris. Ron was someone I worked with in education. We ran a school together in San Diego for a little bit. Chris Legaspi was a former co-worker and down in San Diego. Andrew, founder of Anatomy Tools. Yeah, I know Anatomy Tools. I don't know Andrew personally that well, but I know Anatomy Tools. Yeah, they're the best. Do I know them? Yeah, again, the great people. You're surrounded by good individuals. Seth is asking, when I'm doing sketches while traveling, do I take the time to watercolor on the go? Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I'll carry like a little water brush, small watercolor tin, and good to go from there. Okay, let's see. Let's keep working my way down a little bit more. I'm going to concentrate up to the top portion again a bit further. This is where I'm going to bring in the 9B again real soon. Let's put a core shadow on his head here. Yeah, I'm not smudging. I'm not kind of blending in that way. I'm still using just line with the pencil. Similar to what I would do with ink still. Here's that 9B again. This is where I can now really punch, contrast. Comic Book Worm is asking, will I be doing a Super Running workshop? Yes. So currently, in terms of like my next event, will be at the New York Comic Con, which is in the second week of October. So it'll be coming up real shortly here. So I'll be traveling out. One of my first sort of like bigger events for the year. I did do 1 or 2 at the beginning of the year before my condition. Took a break during the summer. But now that I'm well enough, so going into October, I plan to be in New York. So in New York, obviously I'll be actually at the convention in the Artist Alley Hall, but I'll also be doing a workshop with Dong Ho Kim. It'll be at some, it's like its own independent sort of like location that our manager is setting up. It's a Super Ronnie sort of experience. It's not through Comic-Con. It's our own thing. So it'll be a private event, which you have to sign up for. Which is open now, but limited space from what I believe. And I think like a 4 or 5 hour experience. Both me and Dong Ho Kim will be doing, demos and explanations and that sort of stuff. Excuse me. sharpen this up a little bit more. I'm not really trying to treat this as like a photoreal render. There's obviously darks and lights and transitions and stuff, but I'm still treating it more like a line drawing. Which is why some of these last sort of hits is with a 9B pencil, is like hit these lines. I prefer more of a crosshatch look than a soft blended sort of realistic look on things. Get to some more questions in just a moment. Trying to move forward with enough part of the image. So I'm a bit stop and go with some of the questions here. Robin, appreciate the comments again. Time is asking, confused as to what to do with your art style to be like, and what to be like. I'm assuming what you're saying. You like comic book art, manga art, and you wish to learn both. You feel if you try it all, it will be spread too thin and stuck in both. At this point, if you're early in your education, you shouldn't have to worry about that. Your sort of priority should be about experimentation, trying various styles, trying to produce various products, comics, within that frame of comics, manga, or whatever style it is, doesn't matter. But within comics, beyond that, what else would it be? Maybe it's illustration work for books. Maybe it's supposed to be more commercial design. Maybe it's supposed to be things like design for viz dev and animation. At this point, it's about learning and trying to adapt your skills to attempt multiple things, and then eventually coming to the conclusion as to what you really want to do once you carry over your education to a certain point. So it kind of depends on where you are in your education. Again, usually if it's someone starting in a college, your first 2-3 years should be about trying to learn, to experiment, to find out, to try many different sort of things. By your 4th year or so is where you would maybe really kind of solidify your direction and make a real hard choice as to what you want to do. Usually your education will go longer than 4 years in many cases. If you're like in a 4-year program at a college, people can finish in 4 years, but rarely does it happen anymore. People take breaks. They'll take a summer off, so they'll go maybe like 5-6 years in many cases. So having your 4th year kind of like finding out what it is you want to do is pretty appropriate in my opinion. Zoom out a little bit. Any recommendation on how to get a box mannequin to look more natural and less stiff? Obviously, using those sort of primitive forms, it's going to give you something stiff no matter what. So it's being able to transition the tier of primitive form to anatomical details. So, doing actual anatomical studies, important. Really, it's also really incorporating other styles. Styles of other artists, people that you really enjoy looking at. Doing mimicry, imitation of their work, I think is really good. I don't know why these little bugs are attached to this. Well, it's the lights, but should close my door. They're coming in from there. You see all this like lower half of the body? I'm actually gonna start to fill in with hatching because I want to keep that contrasting up in here. So there's no real like white of the paper in this area. And a lot of this stuff can like blend together. Solid silhouette shape. Even things like how your hatching and lines can go out of your silhouette. You know, I'm not trying to like control this so tightly to be exactly perfectly, you know, clean. And a couple of small hits of darks and lights. Hatching direction, I'm going to go with the parallel of the leg this way. With the knee direction, so it's playing this way, that way. Think of it kind of like a cube, a box. Front plane, top plane, side plane. I want his bowstring to kind of stick out a little bit more here in the silhouette. Push all this down. What instrument is he playing? I'm making it up. It's kind of like those Chinese fiddle things, but elaborated. Ryan's asking, do I have any advice for starting out social media? Do I have any recommendations? You know, reels over still images. You know, to be quite frank, the whole stuff with like social media and Instagram, it kind of sucks to hear, but it's not like really a great place to like grow anymore. In terms of its account and stuff like that, I still think it's a good thing to use. More of as a personal way to just like keep creative, producing your work, learning to share. Is it going to have the same level of traction in terms of like, you know, getting your work spread and seen as it was in the past? Not as much. It's not impossible, which is why I still think I would use it if I started over today. I still enjoy Instagram a lot, just to post and share. So even if I only had like 10 followers, I'd still do the same thing now, right? So it has less to do with trying to build an audience, and use it as a sort of rhythmic routine to keep me producing, right? And it's a place for me to just share my experiences. That's it. If it happens to grow, great. But right now, it's really hard for it to be anything. The algorithm at the moment is built to fight against you. It's just the nature of it. Right now, things like, you know, video, short media content is obviously the biggest thing. So things like YouTube, obviously TikTok is still gigantic. But for artists like us, like, do I use TikTok? No. Obviously, I use, you know, YouTube is when I can. I think video format's great, but not everybody is set up for it in terms of like the logistics and also the comfort in terms of the speaking. So, you know, turning to still images still is a little bit more attractive, approachable, simpler, easier to just jump on, which is something I would still recommend. But within that, is it best to do like reels, or when should I put? Honestly, I don't think about it. Like whether I post a reel or a still image or when time of day, I don't think that detailed. There are some people that try to control it to that degree, but to be honest with you, it's not going to make that much of a difference. So just post when you have something. You can be consistent. I would say post often, produce a lot, but like, is there some sort of media format that's going to make it better than others? Like, not really. Just enjoy producing the work and just happen to have it to share. Nathaniel is asking, was there a period of time where you were working part-time in the field outside of art? If so, how did you find time to balance it, still pursue your art? No, pretty much I've been doing art for my entirety of life. Um, when I went to high school, it's like I wasn't working part-time. I just stayed with my family. When I went to college and I work. That's all I did, full-time. Thankfully, I had help from family to pay for education, but also I took a lot of loans out, owed a lot of money at the end, but it was worth it. And then, even after graduating college, the kind of work I was doing was primarily just art related. And even if it wasn't doing well, or if I wasn't getting a job, I was still producing my own stuff and trying to do my own thing, whether like going to a convention, show, that sort of stuff. Because there are times in which work wasn't always there. There were times in which it's like uh, questions of whether I wanted to go back to the independent, full time work was present, and I had to battle with going back and forth to that, and definitely transitions of eventually going full time to independent work was super challenging because you know I hadn't built up a clientele, and I had mostly worked full time in most of my life, and this is way back in the 2010s or so. So it took a minute and took some time to build up that confidence and also reputation to do what I'm doing now. You know, so I'm very thankful and grateful that I can even do this, where I just have my own personal work, um, run my own school, that sort of thing. It seems like maybe any artist can just do this, right? Just open up a class, do social media work, YouTube, and I can just pay for my daily living. Um, I certainly wouldn't have been able to. This took decades of time to be able to at least give myself a chance and affordance and opportunity to be able to have this be somewhat successful. And successful is consistently just being there present where I can fall back on. But like I said, it took quite a while, a long time. And it was a lot of work, many hours, as most of you, who follow me fairly know. But it's certainly possible to do it yourself as well. So at this point, I don't really have a lot of thoughts of like going back to the studios, going back to the industry. I put my time in for stuff like that, over 7, 8 years of doing it. Um, and now that I've built my sort of like independent sort of work, I wouldn't really give that up. Jimmy's asking, what's the inspiration for this one? There's no inspiration. It was just an idea of a guy with an instrument. That was it. Not a lot of curve hatching, no. I prefer more straights, but curve hatching can be great too. How often do I use charcoal? I haven't touched charcoal in years. Scratch that. I touched charcoal this morning at the art store, and I didn't buy it. It's not that charcoal's bad. I used charcoal extensively when I was in school. Um, but most of the work that I do is in like books, like this, and sketchbooks, and charcoal is not ideal. If I was, working large format, then maybe I consider using charcoal. But for this sort of like small format piece, for me, it's not ideal. Graphite is a little bit better. We're gonna go maybe a few more minutes. We're already gone 2 hours. Doesn't seem like it was 2 hours actually. It's a good sign because my sort of condition in the beginning made it a little bit difficult to go longer than a few hours. Uh, Eyes would get really tired and I get kind of fatigued. But thankfully, right now, I feel pretty good. So it's a good sign that recovery is going even better. Um, in terms of that, it's like everything's pretty much squared away. I'm almost at that 100% mark. I'm at about 90 something percent. So feeling much better. Thankfully, there was a lot of concern and worry for that for a while, especially for this last couple months. But able to move forward. Paulo, appreciate your comments. Nathaniel, not a problem. Time, I'll look up his work. I'm familiar with his. Is that the artist who did the Blade of the Immortal? Double XP is asking, have I sculpted before? Yeah, I have. I enjoy it. I'm not that great at it, but I like it. I've done some 3D a little bit here and there. I think a great 3D program to get started on for anybody who's interested is a Nomad Sculpt. I think Nomad Sculpt's great. You can do it on the iPad. You can even do it on your phone. But I've done a lot of physical hand sculpt a little bit here and there. And I really do enjoy it. Let's just knock this little monkey in the back down a little bit. Just a silhouette. Jimmy, appreciate the words. Time is mentioning, you think more art teachers should tell their students that staring at a paper for a long and close may lead to you getting forced to wear glasses. It's the same thing with reading. Well, this is why like looking outside once in a while is good. This is why I don't look at my drawing for super extended periods of time. Working a couple hours at the most, 2-3 hours at the most is really ideal. Stepping away, doing something else is probably your best bet. Right now we've gone 2 hours, and this is close to my maximum. I would say about 2.5 hours is something I'm okay with. 3 hours is something I can do comfortably, but just because you can doesn't mean you should all the time. There are times in which you do have to kind of go extensively longer, but it's being mindful of it is all it is. And again, we're close to being done here. If anybody has any other last questions, comments, thoughts, please do share. I plan to come back online hopefully relatively soon. My classes won't begin until mid-October, so I have a little bit of time still to just jump onto YouTube when I can. Even when I'm teaching, I plan to still try to attempt it, as I always try to. That'll be the intention. Well, he has multiple arms, but you can also see him being really fast. This is the Heinrich Klei inspiration then. It's like Heinrich Klei did that piece of a violinist moving really fast with multiple arms. Yuli's asking any tips for landscape scenes and compositions. That's a whole another subject matter that we can talk about for many many hours. But to keep it simple, I mean, it pertains to everything else we talked about. Things like observation helps the most. Being able to look and see natural compositions, then from there, editing, design wise, how you want to kind of like control it for storytelling. But for even landscapes, readability is good. It's not really so much storytelling per se. It's more about being able to help the viewer navigate through the piece, right? Where do you want them to look and where do you want them to go? How do you even want them to feel? Sometimes a bit more on that side of mentality can be just as important as a technical thing of drawing and painting. So think about those in the beginning. Nathan, I will be attending New York Comic Con, so I will be there. So, according to me, what's the right approach to design? Should we figure out the functions first and then the forms, or the other way around? It's kind of, they go together hand in hand, right? You can say one is more important than the other depending on your discipline. So for me, my discipline comes more from form to then function, whereas like some other area of design can be more about function to then form. But I think it's more about situational, about what it is you're creating in that moment, and you can fluctuate and adapt and hybrid. You can think of both as they go together at the same time because they should influence each other, more in balance, right? So the form shouldn't only dictate the function, and nor should the other way around. So if I was designing a character, I want to think about who that person is, what they do, why they exist, and where they came from. But at the same time, I have to think about then the stylistic forms and shapes pertaining to the actual aesthetics and design language that goes to that medium and project or whatever I'm making. So then there's a technical aspect to it, but I will be thinking about both as I'm developing that piece. So it's never really one or the other for me. They're, to me, equally as important. It's like the yin and yang approach, right? Delta, the pencil I'm using right now is a pencil called the Mitsubishi. This is a 9B. Jeff, appreciate that. See you hopefully in the class in the future. In any case, this is coming to its conclusion. We'll kind of back up a little bit more. You can kind of see the whole piece. A rare instance of some pencil drawing and sketching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I don't do pencil work all the time, but I do find it to be very entertaining. It's very therapeutic, relaxing, low stress approach in terms of drawing for me. It's very forgiving in many ways, but from here it's like on to the next one, right? On to the next drawing, on to the next piece. In terms of the next stream, I'm hoping to jump on, what is it today? Today's Tuesday, I believe. I think maybe even this coming Thursday or Friday this week, I might try to jump on again. Right now I'm on the mode of just kind of relaxing, finishing up some just errands of daily living stuff. I got to do some class prep because that will start up next month. But for the time being, I'm kind of on my own just to recover more and more as I go along. Just getting prepared for some more. Oh, I'm sorry, I have filming on Friday for Ciparani. So most likely Thursday. So tomorrow will be off, and then Thursday I might jump on. Other than that, please check out my Instagram if you guys have are interested in more about when I jump on. Usually I post a story up there. Subscribe to YouTube channel because trying to keep it maintained and growing as much as we can. Word of mouth, share what you guys are experiencing or seeing through stuff like this, so others can maybe join in. And any suggestions you guys might have, please put a comment down below, and I'll try to do the best I can to accommodate certain needs. But I do hope some of these questions and answers are something that is helpful for your further progression and growth. It's not really an answer, more just advice and direction. Take it that way. Nothing here is strictly dogma. But I hope you guys had fun. I'll see you on the next one. And we'll try to aim for Thursday at this point. If we do, we will. If we don't, I'll see you next time. So appreciate it, guys. Thank you.